Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. How are we all doing? Enjoying this beautiful, calm sea day? Fantastic. Well, I'm just out here. We've got Andrew Johnson coming up. This lovely gentleman behind me. He's going to give his final talk of the voyage on the City of London. But I just want to tell you about a couple more events that are happening throughout the day. At 5:30 p.m. in here in the Grand Salon, we've got our fantastic game show, the Liars Club, which is a hilarious concept for a show. We've got four esteemed panelists here, and they're going to be given a gobbledygook random word that you've never heard of before, and your job is to suss out which one of them is lying when they give you the definition. Very fun. I recommend that you get yourselves there. And then at 9:30 tonight, we have our Seaborn Six back with a bang with their King, Queen, and Prince, celebrating the music of the King of Pop, Michael Jackson, the Queen of Song, Whitney, and of course, Prince himself. But for now, help me in welcoming Andrew Johnson with the City of London, ladies and gents.
Thank you, Jeremy. As he says, this is my last talk of this voyage. Kathy and I are leaving in Edinburgh because tomorrow evening we have a livery banquet in the City of London, which is what I'm going to be talking about today. I did toss up whether I should wear my white tie and tails for this presentation, but believe me, it is way too hot up here to want to be doing that. I want to say a few thank yous because these things don't just happen. And clearly, I must thank Kathy for a lot of the research that she does working with me in preparing these things. I want to thank Jamie. They lead the entertainment team and us. They welcome us on board like old friends, and they make sure all the programs work. And behind them, we have Jeffrey and Nico. You've heard their names before. What you probably don't realize is that every one of us comes on here with some sort of different technology, and they just make it work. Somehow they just make it work. So I would like to say thank yous to them, and thank you to you also for being here, supporting me, listening to us, chatting around, giving us your feedback, and hopefully enjoying what John T. and I and others have had to share with you. So thank you all. Thanks, Jeremy. Now, Dick Whittington and his cat are elements of Christmas pantomime in the UK. British children, English especially, know the story of Dick Whittington. He was around in the late 14th, early 15th century. He was a wealthy merchant, and he was later the Lord Mayor of London. And I'll talk a little bit about the Lord Mayor and the role of the Lord Mayor. The story, which is depicted at Christmas in family plays in theatres around the country, is of a poverty-stricken young man who made his fortune through the sale of his cat to a rat-infested country. And the cat single-handedly cleared all the rats. Well, that's the story. There's not an awful lot of solid fact behind that. For example, Richard Whittington did not come from a poor family, and as far as anyone knows, neither did he have a cat. But an important element of the legend is that in 1392, he attempted to flee his service as a kitchen boy one night, heading towards home. But the bells of St. Mary Le Bow Church, which is located about 100 yards from St. Paul's Cathedral, telling him to turn and go back to lead the City of London. Promised he would be the Lord Mayor of London one day. Now, the story's been a favourite amongst British, I say particularly at Christmas time. I was a freeman of the City of London. It's close to my heart. And today I intend to tell you a little bit more of the history and legends of Old London. Now, I'm not alone here. There are at least two other city liverymen in the room at the moment. And in my pocket here, I have my livery jewel, which proves that I am entitled to make up all this stuff that I'm about to share with you. So first, a definition. The City of London is that red dot in the middle of the greater metropolis of London. City of London is a city, it's a local government district. It contains the historic centre and the primary central business district of London. It constituted most of London from the time of the settlement by the Romans back in the 1st century through to the Middle Ages, when the city, the town, started to grow. Now, it's really only a very small part geographically of the greater metropolis of London. London is formed of 33 individual local authority boroughs or districts. The City of Westminster is one of those 33, and the City of Westminster sits to the west of the City of London, which is not a London borough. It is an independent and indeed the smallest county of the United Kingdom. You'll have heard the city referred to as the Square Mile, I'm sure. Certainly many of you will have done. It isn't actually square, and it isn't actually a mile. But it's a nice, easy way for us to refer to it. It is a special part of London. It has traditions and it has legends all of its own. The residential population of this very small area is about 8,000 people. So it's about the same size in terms of population as the little town that Kathy and I live in, right up in Sherwood Forest. But around 10 million people visit the city every year, and 500,000 people work in it. So remember, 8,000 live there, 500,000 work in it or are dependent upon it. It has expanded. A lot of the business activities have developed in Docklands, which is not far away, but more significantly, the square footage space of London within the city has multiplied many times by going upwards, as that's the way that it has developed. And the modern city vies with places like the New York City, downtown Manhattan. It vies with Manhattan also as the financial capital of the world. Many banking, insurance institutions have their headquarters there, and it was through insurance that I had my original associations with London. The London Stock Exchange is there, so shares, bonds, and various other traded items. Lloyd's of London, the insurers, are there. This ship is insured with Lloyd's of London, as is a major part of the maritime fleet of the world. The Bank of England is also based there. So let's go back and have a look at its roots. Originally, this area, London, was known as Londinium, which the Romans established as a settlement on the current site of the City of London about AD 43. You see a bridge over the River Thames, which turned it into a corridor, a road nexus, a major port. The boundaries of the Roman city are very similar to those of the City of London today, although the present city does extend further west than Londinium's Ludgate, which is where it used to end. And the Thames at that time was an undredged and somewhat wider river, much less managed than it is today. But by the time that London Wall was constructed, the city's fortunes were in decline. There were problems of plague and fire, recurring problems. The Roman Empire entered a long period of stability and decline. We all know the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. And in AD 410, the Romans withdrew entirely from Britain. London was deserted. The local population carried on their farming around its perimeter, but the only thing that the ghost town was useful for really was building materials, and so a lot got pinched and taken elsewhere. London Wall, and this is a surviving part of the Roman London Wall, it survived for another 1600 years, broadly defining the perimeter of the old city of London. Don't worry, I don't expect you to read this. But in 886, the great king of Wessex, Alfred, arguably, I think, the first king of the English as well, he began the resettlement of the old Roman walled area, and he appointed his son-in-law, Earl Ethelred of Wessex, to take power over it as part of the reconquest of the Viking-occupied parts of England. You may remember Cathy's Viking heritage, so I'm sorry about that, darling. The refortified Anglo-Saxon settlement became known as Lundeburg, London Fort, a borough, and today we would pronounce that Lundborough. The plaque, I know you can't read it, I say I'm sorry, but it's located near to Southwark Bridge, which is one of the major crossing points for the River Thames. It was only laid in 1986 to mark 1,100 years since the re-establishment of the city, and it's on the site of the old harbour and market. Alfred the Great, actually this statue, I have to be honest, this statue is in Winchester, not in London, but it's important because it's relevant. His restoration entailed reoccupying, refurbishing the deserted Roman walled city. They built quays along the Thames. They laid a new city street plan. And his taking of London and the rebuilding of the old Roman city was a turning point in history. In 1066, you all remember what happened in 1066, I'm sure, the Battle of Hastings, when William the Conqueror of Viking descent, it's okay, darling, you're on the up again, invaded England on the south coast and gradually over time took control of England and Wales and then Ireland. He marched on London. He reached as far as Southwark. Remember, I just mentioned that bridge across the river. Southwark is on the south side, the opposite side of the river from the city. But he didn't manage to get across the Thames. He didn't manage to defeat the Londoners. He eventually crossed the River Thames, but at a place called Wallingford, which is about, I'd guess, 40 miles to the west of London. And as he went, as he did, he pillaged the land all the way through. So rather than indulge in a protracted siege, William granted the citizens of London a charter and a freedom which allowed them to continue to trade. The city was it was the largest and one of only a few examples of somewhere retaining some authority at that time. But the freedom that William gave to the City of London is the origin of me and some other people here being freemen of the City of London. Before the Norman conquest, London had enjoyed many freedoms. They had a form of civic administration, quite an advanced form, which is reflected in the charter which William the Conqueror granted them in 1067, where he promised rights, privileges, and laws that the city had enjoyed since the time of Edward the Confessor. That was 20 years earlier. Interestingly, you may have heard the stories of the Domesday Book, which records details of all over the Norman kingdom in Britain. The city wasn't covered by the Domesday Book. It's one quite glaring omission. But he wasn't going to let them go unsupervised, and he built a number of cities around, a number of fortifications around them. And this is one of them, the Tower of London. You will have heard of it. Many of you will have been there, and some of you, I'm sure, will visit when we get to Dover if you have time in London. Officially, it is His Majesty's Royal Palace and Fortress of the Tower of London. It's located on the north bank of the River Thames in central London, which means it's on the same side as the city. It lies within the London borough of Tower Hamlets, so it's actually separated from the eastern edge of the square mile, separated by an open space known as Tower Hill. And in this photo, you can see the red flood at the bottom there, which is ceramic poppies. Now, this is actually taken to mark the end of World War I, the centenary in 2018. But they have returned to mark the end of World War II, 80 years on. And there is a different display of ceramic poppies there today. So I can trace my freedom of the City of London back to William the Conqueror. So what does that mean today? Well, one of the oldest surviving traditional ceremonies still in existence today, it's believed to have been first presented in 1237. The medieval term freeman meant someone who was not the property of a feudal lord, but enjoyed privileges such as the right to earn money, to trade, to own land. Town dwellers who were protected by the charter of their town or city were often free, hence the term freedom of the city. From the Middle Ages to the Victorian era, the freedom was the right to trade, enabling members of a guild or a livery company to carry out their trade or craft within the square mile. Now, there are a number of rights traditionally, possibly apocryphally, associated with freemen. The right to a silken rope if you are to be hanged, because it would be more pleasant than a traditional rope. The right to carry an unsheathed sword in public. Or that if a City of London, because City of London has its own police force, if a City of London policeman finds a freeman drunk and incapable, they should bundle him or her into a taxi and send them home, rather than throw them into a cell. Now, I first became a freeman when we were living in Spain, and I just wondered how easy it would be for that taxi to find its way home from the City of London to our house in the sunshine in southern Spain. And the right to drive our sheep and cattle over London Bridge. I mean, today there is a ceremonial herding each autumn, these days usually over Southwark Bridge rather than London Bridge. And like so many of the activities we're involved in, it is in support of one of the city's charitable causes. New freemen are enrolled in a ceremony at Guildhall where they receive a guide to conducting their life in an honourable fashion. They receive a sealed certificate, which we are entitled to carry with us, although I believe everyone has it hanging on a wall in the frame style that you see there. Freedom can be obtained today by servitude, by patrimony, by nomination, or by the presentation through a livery company. It is a privilege, there's no doubt about that, but it clearly is not to be seen as an honour in the way that a knighthood might be seen as an honour. And we are spoken to very carefully and instructed not to boast of our freedom, and I hope I don't. The granting of an honorary freedom of the City of London, or freedom honoris causa, is extremely rare, generally only awarded to royalty, to heads of state, figures of genuine global standing. The Queen Camilla, is a liveryman of my livery company. Not the only one. It's the first one that she was admitted to, and she is a liveryman of others as well. But so the livery companies of the City of London, there are 110 in total, and they consider their status by the order of precedence, whether they were the first to be established or the 110th to be established, or wherever. And they combine the ancient and modern trade associations and guilds. Almost all of them are styled the worshipful company of whatever their respective craft might be. I am a liveryman of the worshipful company of joiners and sealers. We are carpenters and wood craftsmen. Well, when I say we are, clearly those of you who know anything about me will know that I'm not. I have no craft skill at all. But what I'm able to bring, like a lot of us, is real-world experience to help the young apprentices that we wish to develop into the craft, to help them to establish themselves, to get used to the idea of working, to present themselves as beneficially as they can. And this is a photo of the Royal Charter for my company, which traces its formal history back to the 1300s. But the idea of journeyman joiners in our case, can be traced back at least to ancient Egypt. And the journeymen would carry with them the credentials that demonstrated that they had the skill to do the job, so that if a journeyman was from London but saw an opportunity in Winchester or York, he could take his credentials with him, and they would accept those as evidence of his ability to work there. He'd have to prove himself as well, of course. Before the Reform Act of 1832, the liveryman had the exclusive right to elect the 4 members of Parliament who represented the city. The term livery originated in the specific form of dress worn by retainers of noblemen, and then by extension to special dress to denote status belonging to a trade. Today, as liverymen, we are clothed in the livery. The gown, a rather grand gown, is put upon us as we are admitted to the livery of our own company. And today, as liverymen, we are members of the college that elects the sheriffs and the Lord Mayor of the City of London. Today, 39 of the 110 city livery companies own premises in London, most of them quite grand halls for meetings and banquets and the business of the company. Among the earliest known to have had halls are merchant tailors and the goldsmiths in the 14th century. And uniquely, the kitchen and crypt of the Merchant Taylors' Hall survived both the Great Fire of London and the Blitz in the Second World War. And the kitchens have now been in uninterrupted use for 600 years. There are blue plaques all around the City of London, marking the place where other livery halls used to be. You will have heard the expression at 6s and 7s. This is actually a pub near Sydney in Australia. And you may already know the origin of the expression at 6s and 7s. And I'm sure there are various different possible explanations, but the one that we like to favour tells the story of when the Merchant Taylors and Skinners livery companies, 2 companies, the Merchant Taylors and the Skinners, were formed. They were both formed in the same year, in 1327. And on the basis of the order of precedence, they would be the 6th and the 7th company, and status is quite important. But they argued over the 6th place and their order in precedence. And so, 150 years, almost 150 years later, after all this bickering, the Lord Mayor of London, Sir Roger Robert Bilston ruled that at the Feast of Corpus Christi, the companies would exchange between 6th and 7th place, and they would feast in each other's halls. So nowadays, they alternate the precedence each year. This year, one will be 6th, the other will be 7th. Next year, it will be reversed. The Lord Mayor of London is the city's mayor. He's the leader of the City of London Corporation. And within the City of London, the Lord Mayor is accorded precedence over everyone except the sovereign. And he retains various traditional powers, rights, and privileges, including the title and style, the Right Honourable Lord Mayor of London. And as you can see here, he gets a pretty swanky show each year as well, which we thoroughly enjoy being part of. It really is very special. It's one of the world's oldest continually elected civic offices. It's entirely separate from the directly elected Mayor of London, whose political office controls a budget covering the much larger area of London, Greater London, which I showed you. And his office is the new City Hall, just to confuse things, called City Hall, is down near Canary Wharf on the river. This is the Lord Mayor's official residence, Mansion House. It's a Grade 1 listed building, you won't be surprised at that, to the east end of Poultry in London. And it's used for some of the City of London's official functions, including the annual white tie dinners. At the Easter banquet, the main speaker is always the Foreign Secretary, who then receives a reply from the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, that is the longest serving ambassador to the Court of St. James, to London. In early June, it is the turn of the Chancellor of the Exchequer to give his Mansion House speech about the state of the British economy. Or I should say, to give his or her Mansion House speech, because the current Chancellor of the Exchequer is indeed a woman. Guildhall, this building here, not too far away from Mansion House, hosts many events throughout the year, the most notable one being the Lord Mayor's Banquet, which is held in honour of the immediate past Lord Mayor and is the first to be hosted by his successor. And in keeping with tradition, it's at this banquet that the Prime Minister makes a major world affairs speech. So you can see this tiny little area of London is really very important to the traditions, to the leadership, to the management of London, but also to the governance of the country as well. Guildhall has been a town hall for several hundred years. It's still the ceremonial and administrative centre of the City of London and its corporation. And as I say, this is not the same place as City Hall, the very new building that manages the metropolitan Greater London. The term Guildhall refers both to the whole building with its libraries and offices and various dining rooms and so on, and to its main room, which is a medieval great hall. And we have been fortunate enough to attend banquets there. There is also a wonderful Roman temple underneath Guildhall Art Gallery, which is open to the public to attend. I mentioned the Great Fire of London a little earlier in 1666. So I'm jumping from 1066, when William conquered England, to 1666. The fire swept through central parts of the English city from Sunday the 2nd of September to Thursday the 6th of September. It gutted the medieval city of London inside those old Roman city walls. It threatened, but it didn't actually reach most of the suburban homes. But it did disrupt enormously. It didn't touch Westminster. It didn't touch Charles II's Palace of Whitehall or most of the suburban slums, but it consumed over 13,000 houses, 87 parish churches, St. Paul's Cathedral, and most of the buildings of the city's authorities. And it's estimated to have destroyed the homes of 70,000 of the city's 80,000 inhabitants. So rebuilding schemes poured in for the gutted city, encouraged by King Charles II. If it had been rebuilt under some of these plans, London would have rivaled Paris for its grand, baroque, wide avenues. But instead, the city decided it wanted to maintain its city feel, and pretty much the historic road plan was maintained. The big difference was that stronger wharves were built along the length of the Thames, where it bordered London, and most importantly, buildings were constructed of stone rather than wood. New public buildings were created on their predecessors' sites, and perhaps the most famous is St Paul's Cathedral and its smaller cousins. Christopher Wren actually built 50 new churches, and many of those still survive to this day. Some of you will have visited this, the monument, a monument of to the Great Fire, which was erected near Pudding Lane, again designed by Christopher Wren and Robert Hooke. 61 metres tall and known simply as the monument. It marks the spot where the fire stopped. But have you also seen the Golden Boy of Pye Corner in Smithfield? According to the inscription, it's evidence of God's wrath on the city of London for the sin of gluttony, that the fire started at Pudding Lane and stopped at Pye Corner. London, after the fire, owes an awful lot to this man. He was an English anatomist, astronomer, geometer, mathematician, a physicist, but also one of the most highly acclaimed English architects in history. He was accorded the responsibility for rebuilding all of those churches, including what is regarded as his masterpiece, St Paul's Cathedral on Ludgate Hill, which was completed in 1710. Now, this is an image, a model of the old St Paul's Cathedral. This one had stood on the site for about it actually took 300 years to build, and in 1314 it was dedicated to St Paul. It wasn't the first church there, it was probably the fourth on that site. But it was already in pretty severe structural decline when the fire arrived. In the early 1600s, Inigo Jones had been given the job of renovating the church, but the English Civil War came along in 1642, which put a stop to that work. And by the time of the Great Fire, its crypt was used to store books from the book market, which was held just outside. So there was an amazing quantity of flammable material there when the fire arrived. The cathedral is one of the most famous and most recognisable sights of London. Its dome, framed by the spires of Wren's city churches, it's dominated the skyline for over 300 years, and at 365 feet high, it was the tallest building in London from 1710 right up until 1967. Now, one of the best-known images, best recognised images of London during the war is this photograph of St Paul's taken in 1940 during the second Great Fire of London, during the Blitz. During the Battle for Britain. I could do a whole talk on St Paul's. It could go on for a very long time. But there's one very famous inscription there. You won't find any elaborate sarcophagus to Christopher Wren, to the designer. Instead, you'll find just the famous words written by his son, inscribed on the floor. It says, I will translate it quickly, if you are looking for a monument to this man, look around you. It was written in Latin. Now, here's one for the pedants among us. St Paul's Cross was a preaching cross, an open-air pulpit in the grounds of Old St Paul's Cathedral. It survived well enough to be restored. The pulpit stood in Cross Yard, an open space which is to the north side of St Paul's Churchyard. A monument stands in this area of the cathedral precinct now, but it's not the exact spot where Paul's Cross stood. There is, though, this stone-carved circle with the words, "Here stood Paul's Cross, marking the original location. And talking of stones that have moved, if you walk along Cannon Street, facing Cannon Street Station, you might walk straight past this little window. But it is of great interest to Londoners. Originally thought to be from a Roman temple, the London stone was on display to tourists back in Tudor times, used as a reference for addresses. He lives by London Stone. The trader is by London Stone. Later placed in the wall of Wren's St Swithin Church. That was demolished in 1962, and it's appeared in a number of works of literature, seen as a talisman of luck. And it's had a pretty checkered history. Now, by the late 16th century, London had increasingly become a major centre for banking, for international trade, for commerce. The Royal Exchange was founded in 1565 by Sir Thomas Gresham. It became a centre for commerce and insurance, particularly Royal Exchange insurance, sees that as an important part of its legacy. On Threadneedle Street, we have the Bank of England, which moved to its present site in 1734, opposite Royal Exchange on Threadneedle Street. Now, I was at a family gathering, my cousin's 80th birthday a few years ago, and our mutual older cousin from the third branch of the family and I were having a chat over a drink, and he said, you know, it really is bizarre, isn't it, the story of 1 Threadneedle Street. And so I said, yeah, sorry, what story is that? And he said, well, you know the story of great-grandpa Frank's brother. So I said, no. And he said, well, the way the story goes in the family is that he was a bit of a gambler and a bit of a rogue, and he owned a piece of land on what is now 1 Threadneedle Street, and he gambled it, and he lost it. That is one of the most valuable pieces of real estate in the world, certainly in Europe and in London. And if it's true, it passed through the fingertips of my family like water. Immediately to the south of Cornhill and Lombard Street was the location from 1691 of Lloyd's Coffee House. And Lloyd's Coffee House became a place where people trading in financial matters would meet, and especially people who were prepared to take insurance risks on behalf of other people. And Lloyd's, the insurers, the Lloyd's building, all of the names, they trace their history back to that coffee house. Today, Lloyd's building is one of the most modern. It's designed in the style of the Pompidou Centre in Paris, with all the guts on the outside rather than on the inside. And it is quite a spectacular building and actually a really nice place to work. Lloyd's List is the most respected journal of shipping in the world. And as I say, these ships are all registered and insured with Lloyd's. The 18th century was a period of rapid growth for London. There was an increasing population. There was the early stirrings of the Industrial Revolution, and London's role at the centre of the evolving empire. Expansion continued and became more rapid by the beginning of the 19th century, with London growing in all directions, including into the East End. And some of you may have, I was going to say enjoyed, may have watched the soap EastEnders. The use of the term West End, by contrast, began in the early 19th century to describe the fashionable areas west of Charing Cross, so beyond Trafalgar Square. The West End covers parts of the boroughs of Westminster and Camden, and while the City of London, or the Square Mile, is the main business and financial district of London, the West End is the main commercial and entertainment centre of the capital. And just to avoid confusion, Westminster, the City of Westminster, is a borough in its own right that holds city status. And aside from a number of large parks and open spaces, the population density of the district is very high. There are lots of sites that you would recognise associated here. St James's Palace, Buckingham Palace, the Palace of Westminster, which is where the Houses of Parliament sit, 10 Downing Street, the main departments of government, and the shopping centres of Oxford Street, Regent Street, Piccadilly, Bond Street, and the nighttime entertainment centre of Soho, Shaftesbury Avenue, where most of the main theatres are. Now, we started with a pantomime, Dick Whittington. I'm going to look at a couple of nursery rhymes because they have London connections, especially bridge, bell, and more connections. You may have heard children, you may have sung it yourself, Oranges and Lemons. Certainly our children know it, we knew it, our parents knew it. And it's a traditional English nursery rhyme, folk song, a singing game, which refers to the bells of several of the churches, all either within the city or very close to the city, including these two, James Gibbs' St Martin in the Fields and St Mary Le Bow, which I referred to earlier on, which was designed by Wren. St Mary Le Bow is also the centre of Cockney culture. A Cockney is someone, by tradition, who is born within the sound of Bow bells. Now, in the east of London, heading out of town, there is a district called Bow. The story has nothing to do with that area. It is all to do with this church, St Mary Le Bow, which, as I say, is very close to St Paul's. There are lots of theories for the line which says, "And here comes a chopper to chop off your head." Children sing this. Including that it deals with child sacrifice, it describes public executions, or possibly King Henry VIII's marital difficulties, which probably settles happily with me. There's also the nursery rhyme, "London Bridge is falling down." This is the early London Bridge, but not as early as this one, which was filled with traders and businesses and chapels. It was a community in its own right with 140 houses, shops and more. It came about because of the murder of Thomas à Becket, Archbishop of Canterbury, and Henry II commissioned a new stone bridge in place of the old with a chapel at its centre dedicated to Becket, and that became the starting point of pilgrimage to Canterbury. The small arches of the bridge slowed the flow of the river, allowing it to freeze in winter, much to the disgust of the watermen who used to carry people across for a fee. So they would break the ice at the bottom of the steps, place their boats there and charge people a few pennies to step onto the ice over their boats because they couldn't actually take them anywhere. But in 1813, a big freeze marked the death knell of this bridge. And by back in 1799, there had been a competition to design a replacement with fewer pillars, wider arches, and so on. And the foundation stone was laid in 1825. But it opened in 1831, and it was already way too small for the demand. In April 1968, Rennie's Bridge was purchased by the Missourian entrepreneur Robert P. McCulloch of McCulloch Oil, paid $2.5 million. There were people who claimed, of course, he really thought he was buying Tower Bridge. This man wasn't that stupid. He wanted London Bridge, and each piece was, as it was dismantled, was meticulously numbered, taken through the Panama Canal up to California, and trucked from Long Beach to Arizona, where it forms part of the central attraction of Lake Havasu City, a sort of theme park in the desert. The current London Bridge, its replacement, was designed by Lord Holford, opened by Queen Elizabeth in 1973. In the second half of the 19th century, increased commercial development in the East End of London led to the construction of Tower Bridge, a beautiful, ornate structure that everyone will recognise. A bascule suspension combination. The bridge opens to let taller craft through, including when we are in the basin for a cruise departure. And the smaller ships, today only the expedition ships have seaborne, but some other ships will depart from there almost opposite the tower. And this is the exciting project, the Illuminated River Project, designed to brighten up London's rather drab bridge lighting. 15 crossings became part of Illuminated River. Now this was conceived before COVID and lockdown, and it was a real challenge to get it introduced. But it was privately funded. We hope it will continue. I was there not long ago and the lights were turned off, but we hope that they will come back. Now I'm going to finish with just a few hidden gems. I am also running over time, so I'll be as fast as I can. I particularly encourage you, if you are in the City of London, to seek out some of the gardens. There are some spectacular, often very small, some spectacular gardens in the City of London. If you can link up to a guide or find a printed guide to take you through, do it, please. The markets of London are well worth a visit. This is Old Smithfield, which is an ironic term because its successor is now virtually at the end of its life. Covent Garden is a beautiful market site to visit. Borough Market, just across the river in Southwark, is my favourite market in the UK. Simply wonderful and a great place for cheese and charcuterie. I should stop. There are lots of other attractions in the city. The Museum of London, this is in the process of moving and expanding, and the expansion has been partly by establishing new sites around. If you get the chance to go to the Docklands Museum, do go. It's just fascinating. There is so much to see. And the London Mithraeum, a Roman temple discovered in Walbrook, a street in the city of London, during construction work in 1954. It's now open to the public. It's in the Bloomberg London headquarters. And they decided to restore the temple to Mithras to its original site and to make it available at limited times. There's also the City of London Police Museum, which looks at the damage during the Blitz, the way the police work to this day, the counter-terrorism activity, and their current work against economic crime and cybercrime. There's been some sort of police force in the City of London since Roman times, but the current city police headquarters is built on the site of the Roman fortress that probably housed some of the city's first police. And I really don't have time to go into Mr. Harvey's role. But the City of London is full of so many other stories, hidden gems like Leadenhall Market. I love Leadenhall Market. It's just beautiful to walk through the colour, the grandeur, the grace. It's wonderful. And Kathy and I would love to tell you more. As I say, we leave tomorrow, but hopefully we'll meet up again on another cruise. For now, I'm going to say thank you very much for being here. We are here this evening. We're more than happy to take questions, but I recognise that this place needs to be turned into a liars' club in time for 5:30. I hope we'll see you there. Thank you.